My name is Maricel, and I never thought a simple family dinner could feel so strange and uncomfortable. I sat at the table with my plate, barely touching the food. The air around us was heavy, not with happiness or laughter, but with a quiet that felt like it was waiting for someone to speak first. My sister, Celine, spoke first. She leaned back in her chair with a smile that didn't feel real at all. "So now you don't have a job, poor thing," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I didn't look at her right away. I watched my dad lift his glass, as if what she said didn't even involve him. My mom smiled politely, but her eyes told the truth. They wanted to see me upset. They thought I would cry, say sorry, explain myself, or beg them to understand. I cut my food slowly. The knife went through easily. I felt calm. It was almost funny how little they knew about me. They thought I had lost everything. They thought I was weak. They thought I had nowhere to go. They believed their story about me. I took a deep breath before I spoke, not to defend myself, but to remind myself to stay calm. They had no idea what I was planning or what I had already started. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong in your own home? Write one short sentence in the comments. I will read them all. And hit the subscribe button, and also, where are you watching this from? And what time of day is it? I want to know how far this story goes. Looking back, I can see the pattern in my family. Celine was treated like she was always going to succeed. My dad looked at her with pride, and my mom spoke to her in a warm voice I never heard directed at me. Celine learned early that the house would give her what she wanted. If she asked for something, she got it quickly. My dad said she shouldn't miss chances, and my mom said she deserved the best. Everything came easy to her. For me, things were very different. I had to figure things out on my own. If I wanted something, I had to explain why it mattered, show that I earned it, and ask very politely. When Celine got praised, it came easily. When I got praised, it was like everyone was surprised I did something good. I remember standing in the kitchen while my mom helped Celine get ready for a school event. Dresses were laid on the table, shoes lined up neatly, and jewelry boxes were open. I had finished a project I worked on for weeks. I was proud of it and wanted to show my mom. She looked up, nodded quickly, and went back to helping Celine with her earrings. I told myself it didn't matter if no one noticed. Celine wasn't mean. She just lived in the space my parents made for her. She believed she was meant to be great, and she believed I was already fading away. I learned to move quietly and listen more than I spoke. At dinner, Celine would talk about her ideas and plans. My dad would lean in, excited to hear her. My mom would help her improve her plans. When I spoke, people didn't listen as much. Sometimes they didn't respond. I wasn't invisible. I was just expected to support others without help myself. As I got older, it didn't change. Celine was told to take risks. I was told to be careful. Celine was told the world needed someone like her. I was told life could be hard, so I should be grateful for what I had. I could have argued, but I didn't. I saved my energy. I learned something they didn't expect. Love that is unfair can shape a person, but it doesn't have to control them. I started planning a life that didn't need their approval. I studied, worked hard, and built things quietly. They thought my silence meant I gave up. They were wrong. My silence was preparation. I wouldn't compete with Celine. I would make my own path. A few years later, my life no longer depended on my family. I worked small jobs wherever I could, diners and cafes. Each job taught me something new. I worked early mornings making coffee, afternoons cooking, and evenings cleaning. The work wasn't fancy, but it taught me control. I learned how to work quickly but calmly, speak clearly, and fix mistakes without panic. I noticed what made people happy: friendly greetings, good food, and cozy spaces. I saved money and found a small place near a university. The floor was old, the lights were dull, and the walls were empty. But it felt open, like a blank page I could write on. I fixed it up slowly, sanding counters, painting, and arranging furniture I bought secondhand. I picked soft colors and added plants to make it feel alive. I made a menu with simple but thoughtful dishes, each with its own story. I named the place quietly. I just wanted it to exist. When I opened the doors, only a few students came. They liked the calm, the coffee, and the cozy feeling. Slowly, more people came, some to study, some to talk, some to sit quietly. The mornings were peaceful, sunlight coming in while people talked softly. It felt like breathing. I woke up every day with purpose. I knew every corner of the shop, every recipe, and every regular customer. It was mine in a way nothing from my childhood ever was. When my parents visited, it was just because they felt they had to. They looked around slowly and nodded. My mom called it charming, like a small hobby. My dad asked how long I would keep it before doing something practical. Celine said nothing, just watched like I was always behind her. I wasn't disappointed. I had expected it. I knew their reactions didn't change the value of what I built. The shop grew slowly but steadily, and people came back. Some days, I realized I had made exactly what I always wanted. A place where I belonged, no matter what anyone else thought. One summer, things changed in a way everyone noticed, even if they didn't want to. Celine had a big dream. She wanted to make her own boutique lifestyle brand. She rented a small studio in a fancy part of town, decorated it nicely, and filled it with handmade things. She bought a lot of stuff at once without knowing how to plan it properly. She wanted it all to be perfect quickly, but she didn't understand how much work it would take. Celine posted about her business on the internet. She shared pictures and talked about it all the time. People thought it looked pretty, but there were problems. She didn't keep track of what she sold or how much stuff she had left. She didn't plan carefully, and sometimes she ran out of popular items. The business was exciting to her, but it was also very stressful. Meanwhile, I kept working in my shop. I remembered all the lessons I had learned in diners and cafes, how to make things run smoothly, how to plan, and how to care about every customer. My shop didn't grow super fast, but it grew steadily. People trusted it, liked it, and came back. I built a place that lasted, where people felt safe and cared for. I watched Celine struggle. I didn't gloat. I didn't say anything mean. I knew she had to learn on her own, just like I had. I understood that success isn't always about showing off. Sometimes it's about patience, hard work, and care. I had learned that the hard way. I had learned that building something slowly could make it strong. My parents noticed my shop now. They still didn't understand it fully, but they couldn't ignore it. Some neighbors talked about it. Some students recommended it to friends. Even people outside the university came to see it. It felt strange at first, to know that my hard work was visible to others. But I didn't care if my family understood. I had made a place where I belonged, where my efforts mattered, and that was enough. Celine finally asked me for advice once. She was frustrated because her boutique wasn't going as planned. I gave her some tips quietly, without criticism. She listened, but I knew she had to find her own way. I remembered how I had felt when no one believed in me. I couldn't take away that lesson from her. She had to learn the hard way, just like I did. Even though our paths were very different, I realized something important. I didn't have to compete with Celine. I didn't have to be in the spotlight. My life was mine and her life was hers. We both were learning, just in different ways. I could focus on building my dreams quietly, while she figured out hers. That felt powerful. That felt like freedom. Now, when I think back to that dinner years ago, I smile quietly. They thought I was weak, that I had nothing, that I would fail. But I had learned to build my own world, step by step. I had learned that love isn't always fair, but hard work and patience can make life better. I had learned that being quiet doesn't mean giving up. My silence had been my strength. I looked around my shop one sunny morning. Students were studying, a couple of friends were chatting softly, and the smell of coffee filled the air. I felt a deep calm. This was my place. My hard work had created something real, something lasting. I belonged here. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore, not my parents, not Celine, not anyone. I had found my home in a way I never had before. And I knew that whatever happened next, I could handle it. I had built a life with my own hands, and nothing could take that away from me. At first, she was very, very excited. She talked about her new business, as if it was the most important thing she had ever discovered. She used big words like brand identity and customer engagement, and she said them with such excitement that it sounded like she had found her life's calling. Our parents listened to her carefully. They praised her hard work and said she was finally stepping into her full potential, like she had discovered who she was meant to be. I stayed quiet. I worked on my own things. I knew that excitement alone is not enough. Being excited without a plan is like running full speed into a wall. The studio opened, but it didn't go as she had hoped. Some days, only 2 people came to the studio. Some weeks, she posted online, and lots of people noticed, but nobody actually bought anything. She kept saying she just needed more time. I didn't give advice. Every time I had tried to help before, she had ignored me. Her confidence wasn't because she was skilled or ready. It was because she believed she was meant to succeed, and that was enough. The pressure kept building. She tried pop-up events to get more customers, but she spent more money than she earned. She even brought coffee into the studio to make it more inviting. It made the place nicer, but it also made costs higher. After a while, she stopped talking about money. Instead, she talked about how hard it was to feel misunderstood. One evening, we had dinner together. I noticed that she avoided talking about her business. Our parents carried the conversation for her. They praised her strength, saying how brave she was, as if saying kind words could make the money problems disappear. Her problems got worse quietly. The lease for the studio was due again, and she didn't have money to pay it. Suppliers wanted payment for materials she had bought. Her credit cards were full. One afternoon, she came to my apartment. She moved slowly, spoke softly, but there was pride in her voice. She said she needed help. She needed money to keep the business going long enough to turn it around. I listened without interrupting. When she told me the amount she needed, I felt my breath slow. The number was huge, big enough to risk everything I had worked for. I hesitated. Her expression changed. She reminded me that family helps family. She reminded me that I had always been reliable and that I had never let her fail before. Her words were not a polite request. They were a reminder of what she expected from me. I said I needed time to think. The next morning, my mom called me. She didn't ask how I was. She said Celine was struggling and that it was my responsibility to help. She reminded me of all the times our family had depended on me. I listened until the pressure felt too heavy. I told her no. My voice was calm, but my hands shook a little. There was silence. Then my mom spoke with a tone I remembered from when I was little, the tone that made me feel like I didn't belong. She said I had changed. She said I was selfish because I was independent. I didn't argue. By the end of the summer, things had shifted completely. Celine only spoke to me when she absolutely had to. My mom's warmth turned into polite distance. My dad avoided talking to me directly, which showed me where he stood without saying a word. The change was complete, even though no one admitted it. I had broken an unspoken rule. I had chosen myself. A few days later, I went to a cooking workshop in another city. I believed that my shop would be exactly the same when I returned. I had closed early the night before, checked all the supplies, locked every door, and turned off every light myself. I felt a quiet confidence. I trusted that I had done everything carefully, so nothing could go wrong. The workshop was meant to help me improve my cooking. The instructor taught us a new method to poach eggs. I measured everything carefully and followed the instructions step by step. My thoughts were clear and steady. I didn't call home because I wanted a break. I slept without tension for the first time in weeks. On the final morning, I packed my knives carefully into my knife roll. I felt a sense of ease I wanted to keep with me. I drove home slowly, listening to a podcast about independent restaurants. It talked about how some people tie their identity to their work. I nodded along, thinking about how important it is to grow in every part of life, even when things are hard. I didn't know what awaited me. When I unlocked my shop, the sound I heard was not the usual quiet hum of a small business. It was empty. The counter where I spent long mornings mixing ingredients and brewing coffee was bare. The shelves behind it were empty. The refrigerators were gone. The mixer, the oven, even small items like measuring spoons and glass jars had disappeared. The walls felt bigger, as if space itself was trying to make me feel small. I stood still for several seconds, shocked. My breath slowed, not because I was calm, but because I needed time for my mind to understand what had happened. I walked slowly inside, each step loud in the empty room. The only thing left was a single folder on the floor. Inside were the original lease agreement, unsigned insurance papers, and a small note in handwriting I recognized immediately. It said only, "We had to do what was best." My father had a spare key. I had given it to him months earlier in case of an emergency. I had never imagined that trust could turn into betrayal in this way. Celine knew a company that bought used restaurant equipment. She had mentioned it once while talking about her own struggles. They had coordinated everything while I was away. They had made sure I couldn't interrupt. No one had called me. No one had left a message. There was no attempt at explanation. The quiet of their actions felt heavier than the loss itself. I sat on the bare floor, knees drawn close, letting the truth sink in. They had decided that my work, my investment, and my identity could be used to rescue someone else. My father had believed he was solving a problem. Celine had believed she was entitled to what I had built. The simplicity and certainty with which they acted showed me how long this assumption had existed. I did not cry. My body felt too still for that. Instead, I allowed myself to feel every detail of the moment. I needed to remember it clearly. Betrayal has a sound. For me, it was the silence in that empty room. I stood again, slowly and carefully. Even in shock, I understood something important. The shop was gone. The trust was gone. The last boundary had been crossed quietly, while I wasn't there. There was no going back. The next morning, I returned to the shop. Even before I reached the door, the air felt different. Sunlight poured through the front windows, showing dust patterns where the equipment had once stood. It looked abandoned, like it had been empty for a long time, not just 2 days. I didn't cry or panic. I needed clarity. I locked the door behind me and went to the back room where I kept the folder containing every document about the business. The lease agreement, bank statements showing my initial deposits, invoices from suppliers, and purchase receipts for every single piece of equipment. I placed everything on the floor and sat down. I sorted through each page until the timeline became clear. The shop was registered in my name alone. I had bought all the equipment. There were no co-owners, no shared accounts, and no documents giving anyone else the right to make decisions. Whatever explanations my father and Celine had told themselves did not change the law. I needed someone to speak the truth out loud with me. I called Lyra, a friend I had known for years. She rarely helped me with big problems, but I trusted her. When she arrived, she didn't ask unnecessary questions. She just came and helped me sort through everything. She understood that sometimes words are not enough to explain what happened, and that it is enough to just be there with someone who is hurting. I sat with Lyra and went through each document again. We made a clear timeline of everything that had happened. She helped me understand that I had the right to my business and my equipment. I wasn't imagining it. It wasn't fair, but it was real. She reminded me that being strong doesn't mean I have to carry betrayal quietly. She helped me feel steady again. Even though the shock was heavy, I began to feel a little control returning. I realized that while Celine and my parents had acted to help themselves, I still had the truth on my side. My shop, my work, and my money were mine. I could take steps to protect myself and rebuild. It would take time, patience, and support, but I had the right to choose what comes next. She looked around the room and noticed how quiet it was. The chairs were empty, the walls were still, and even the little clock on the wall ticked slowly, as if it was being careful not to make a sound. She sat down next to me. She was calm, like a strong anchor that keeps a boat from drifting in a stormy sea. I could feel the steadiness of her presence, and it made my heart slow down a little. She listened quietly while I told her about the workshop, about how shocking it was to come back to the shop, and about the note that had been left behind, like a small paper bomb of confusion and sadness. She didn't try to say things like, "It will be okay," or "Don't worry." She didn't get angry or try to make me feel better in a way that didn't help at all. Instead, she spoke softly. She said that sometimes people steal, even inside families, and that noticing it doesn't mean I had done anything wrong. Her words were like a gentle weight I could lean on. They stayed in the air around me long after she left, like a soft blanket I could wrap myself in. I opened my laptop and started looking for information about the law. I wanted to know what could be done when a small business is hurt by someone taking things without permission. I read rules, guides, and laws about taking someone else's property, how to report it, and what kind of proof I would need. The words on the screen were serious, practical, and calm. They made the situation real in a way that sadness, hurt, or betrayal alone could never do. I found a small law firm that helped people with problems like mine. I called them. The lawyer who answered spoke clearly and calmly. She didn't try to act sorry for me, and she didn't act angry at the people who had taken my things. She asked for my lease, the receipts, the sales tax registration papers, and photos of the shop when it was empty. She also asked if I knew who had taken the equipment. I told her yes, my dad had let it happen, and Celine had organized the removal. The lawyer paused for a moment, and then she said that my case was actually very simple. The items in the shop belonged to me legally. Taking them without permission could be called conversion of property, which is just a fancy way of saying taking something that is not yours. I could ask the court for money to cover the value of everything that was taken. The law didn't need my anger, my crying, or any big drama. It only needed papers, patience, and careful steps. Over the next few days, I worked like a detective. I took pictures of the shop from every angle. I made a detailed list of everything that had been taken, including serial numbers, when I bought it, and how much it cost. I gathered bank statements showing money I had spent, receipts from all the stores where I bought things, and my business registration papers. I also wrote a timeline starting from the day I signed the lease for the shop. I did these things carefully over and over, and in that repetition, I felt a strange kind of calm. I was building something again, not with food or spices, but with evidence. I realized then that this was no longer about being understood or forgiven. The shop had been taken, and the trust one had in my family had been taken too. But the law doesn't care about feelings, it only cares about facts. And now, I would move forward with what was mine. The next step was filing the claim in court. A few months later, the decision arrived. It didn't come with fanfare or shouting or tears of triumph. It came quietly with steady certainty. The court didn't see this as a family disagreement. I didn't see it as a personal misunderstanding. The court saw it as a business problem. It looked at the facts and the papers and made its decision based on that. My lawyer presented the ownership records, receipts, signed agreements with suppliers, and the lease that said I was the only owner. The statements from the buyers of the equipment clearly showed who had asked for it and who had moved it. Everything matched perfectly. The judge said that my dad and Celine had taken the equipment without permission. They were required to pay me back for the full value of the equipment, the money I lost because the shop was closed, and the legal fees I had spent. The repayment wouldn't happen all at once. The money would be taken slowly from their wages, and the court would keep an eye on it. They also wouldn't be able to borrow money easily in the future. This wasn't punishment for fun. It was a practical consequence for taking something that didn't belong to them. Celine was affected in ways that went beyond money. At her job, people noticed her legal troubles. Her reputation, which had once helped her, started to change. People who had been warm and friendly became formal and careful. There were whispers when she entered the room, quiet pauses in conversations, and subtle distance in the way people acted. She tried to remain calm, but her stress was clear in the careful way she moved and spoke. My dad changed too, but in a quieter way. He didn't argue, didn't try to explain himself, and didn't call me. He avoided neighbors and relatives. His silence felt less like anger, and more like he knew that words wouldn't fix anything. My mom called once. Her voice was shaky. She said families should stick together, that forgiveness was necessary, and that leaving was cruel. She said I was turning my back on the people who raised me. I listened to her voicemail without answering. I realized she still thought loyalty meant doing whatever she wanted, not respecting each other. After the court decision, I asked for a no-contact order. The process was simple and official, without emotional words. It created a boundary that should have been there long ago. I knew that cutting ties wouldn't erase our history, but staying in contact would only keep hurting me. This was not revenge. It was protection. Sometimes closure isn't about making up with someone. Sometimes closure is about leaving the place that keeps you small. Life moved quietly after that. There was no dramatic celebration. There was only a steady return of space, calm, and control. I rented a small kitchen in a converted warehouse near the university. Students walked past between classes and apartments. The space was simple, with sunlight streaming through the big old windows onto the stainless steel counters I had put together myself. I decided to start small not because I was scared, but because I wanted to build something that fit the person I had become, not the person I used to try to be. The first weeks were slow, which was okay. I put on music I liked while preparing dough in the mornings, measuring flour and water with my hands in memory, remembering the feeling of baking before everything had gone wrong. Each morning I opened the door without fear of being judged or expected to impress anyone. I was just there. Students started to come in, first just out of curiosity. Then, they kept coming because they liked the calm and personal feeling of the place. I remembered their names, their usual orders, their exams, and the small things in their lives. I realized that I had never wanted a big, fancy place to show off. I wanted a place where people could feel welcome, just for being themselves. I also started teaching a small weekend baking class. The group was always different, but there was always laughter when dough stuck to fingers and joy when bread or cookies came out golden from the oven. I guided them gently, not like a boss, but like someone encouraging a friend. I could feel myself breathing easier than I had in years. I learned to enjoy quiet moments without expecting interruptions. I learned to wake up without bracing for disappointment. I learned that peace is not about having no responsibilities. Peace is about respecting yourself. My life didn't become extraordinary. It became mine. I learned that family doesn't make hurting someone okay. Love doesn't mean erasing yourself. We are allowed to leave situations that hurt us, no matter who is on the other side. Boundaries are not walls to keep others out. They are ways to protect yourself so you can stay whole. Healing isn't loud. It's built quietly, choice by choice, day by day, until one morning, you wake up and realize you're not just surviving, you're living. Every day, as I measured flour, kneaded dough, and watched bread rise in the oven, I felt a little more peace. The smell of warm bread, the sound of students laughing, and the sunlight across the counters reminded me that I had built something new, something that belonged to me. I was learning that happiness isn't about big things. It's about small things done carefully and lovingly, like kneading dough or remembering someone's name. Sometimes a student would ask me why I started the shop again, why I didn't give up. I would smile and tell them that it wasn't about the shop. It was about me. I wanted a place that matched who I was now, not who I had been. I wanted to feel calm, safe, and respected. And when I looked around at the kitchen filled with sunlight, laughter, and the smell of baking, I knew I had found it. Life continued quietly. Days passed, sometimes slow, sometimes busy. Each day I made small choices that helped me feel safe and happy. I decided who could enter my life and who could not. I decided that peace was more important than pleasing everyone. I chose myself, and in that choice I found freedom. I learned that healing doesn't need noise. It doesn't need to be announced or celebrated. It grows slowly, like bread rising in the oven, or like flowers sprouting in spring. Step by step, day by day, you grow stronger, calmer, and more yourself. And one day you wake up and realize that you are not just surviving. You are truly living.